Trump just slapped Canada with a brand new 35% tariff. This is one of the biggest economic hits we've ever taken from the United States. A country we all considered an ally not that long ago. And not only that, but we're getting hit harder than others. The EU has a 30% tariff, Mexico 30% as well. And then there's Canada. Canada is getting a 35% tariff. Apparently, it's because we retaliated and we were not easy to deal with. Hi everyone, my name is Raluca MacKenzie and thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get into how this is going to impact inflation, employment, and possibly even your mortgage renewal. And why this is not just a trade war. It is a complete economic mess. Just this Friday, Donald Trump sent an official tariff notice to 23 different countries. All of them, including Canada, are getting hit with new tariffs imposed starting August 1st. But Canada isn't 30% like the others. We're the only country getting 35%. And it's not just on one product. This targets multiple critical sectors such as copper, aluminum, packaging, wiring, vehicle parts, processed metals, manufacturing inputs, basically everything that keeps our economy moving and robust. But these tariffs don't get charged at the Canadian border. They're charged to US companies that import Canadian goods. So who is absorbing these costs and who do they get passed along to? Walmart, they raise the prices. Home Depot, same thing. Manufacturers, they either cut staff or start sourcing their input materials from somewhere else. And all of that turns into a big mess for us Canadians. So let's break this down and look at some numbers. Canada exports over $15 billion worth of copper and aluminum related goods to the US every year. All of that just got 35% more expensive to bring into the States. And what do US buyers do when things get more expensive? Well, they can either try to absorb some of that cost and pass the rest onto the consumer, or they can switch to another supplier, such as Mexico or even China. So that means Canadian suppliers lose that business. Margins shrink, and as we have already seen, layoffs start. Already, since the start of the year, the Bank of Canada reported that Ontario's manufacturing jobs have declined by approximately 55,000, directly tied to the impact of US tariffs and related trade uncertainty. Job losses occurred especially in metal and auto part industries. Algoma Steel and auto plants in Oshawa and Windsor all faced shift cuts and job losses. And this is before the new 35% tariff even kicks in. The Bank of Canada says if this trade fight drags on, our GDP could fall by over 2% by 2026. Ontario's own Financial Accountability Office says growth could drop by 0.5% just this year. This is all just from trade pressures. Now, let's apply this to a real-life scenario. Let's say you're a contractor in Ontario and you need copper wiring, pipes, insulation, brackets, whatever it may be. Every one of those things got more expensive. So you either pass that cost to your clients or you eat some of it up. If you're doing a home renovation, get ready for price hikes all across the board, especially if your suppliers are tied to US wholesalers. Even your groceries will be affected. Many shelf foods are packaged in containers that cross the border multiple times before they hit the shelf. This is much like car manufacturing. Parts cross the border so many times before a vehicle is finally finished and assembled. Let's think about a can of soup for simplicity. The aluminum might be processed in Quebec. Then it's sent to the US to get filled, at which point it is hit with a 35% tariff. Well, actually, as of right now, aluminum is at 50%, I apologize. So then it needs to come back. And at this point, we don't know if there will be another tariff applied because now that product is coming from the United States into Canada. So depending on what the plan is, at every border crossing, that product gets more expensive. So suddenly that $1.47 soup becomes almost $2 at minimum per can. And for the average consumer, that does not make sense. Let's talk about the big chains. In the US, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, these chains import aluminum, copper, processed foods, packaging, all from Canada. These costs get passed along behind the scenes. Prices go up, stock gets reduced, and staff hours get cut. Walmart is already pressuring Canadian suppliers to eat the cost, or they'll replace them. In Canada, Loblaws, Canadian Tire, Walmart, these chains import a lot from the US. And while we haven't hit back with 30% tariffs, Canada is going to have to target US goods one way or another. Many provinces have now removed US alcohol from shelves. Prices will still rise because we're exposed on both ends, import and export. Discounts and sales will be less frequent and prices will continue to climb. So what is Canada doing about all of this? Prime Minister Mark Carney responded with targeted counter tariffs, not 35%, but focused on politically sensitive US goods. We're talking alcohol, tech products, packaged foods, the stuff that hits the US exporters in key swing states. And he gave Washington a deadline of July 21st. If Trump doesn't back off, Canada is preparing another wave of retaliatory tariffs. The next round is said to include beef, soy, even auto parts. But here's the truth. Canada is still heavily dependent on US trade. We send 68% of our exports to the US. Now that is down from 76% last year. We're trying to diversify, but the gap is still huge and significant. In May alone, we exported $41 billion in goods to the US. Compare that to just $20 billion in non-US exports. So even if we hit back hard, we're still taking the damage. Now, yes, Canada is trying to diversify. We're sending gold to the UK, oil to Singapore, aluminum and pharmaceuticals to Italy, which is all great. We should have never depended on the US as much as we did. But we're trying to grow trade with Japan and South Korea and the rest of the Indo-Pacific as well. India, because of its massive population, would be most ideal, as it is also the fastest growing economy in the world. But we've still got some diplomatic baggage there. Relations with India are still strained over the killing of Hardeep Nijjar. There's no new High Commissioner in Canada, and the RCMP investigation is still ongoing. So the diversification plan is there, but the infrastructure, the trust with places like India, and the timelines, they're not quite ready. And in the meantime, small businesses all over Canada are taking massive hits. Exporters are bleeding, and middle-class Canadians are the ones that get left behind. Now let's talk politics for a quick second. Trump says these tariffs are about the fentanyl crisis. He claimed Canada isn't doing enough to stop it at the border. But here's the truth. Less than 1% of the fentanyl entering the US comes through Canada. Over 98% comes from Mexico, often made with precursors from China. So this information is coming straight from US Customs and Border Protection's website. So what's this whole thing really about? I believe it's about Trump's main plan to cripple Canada's economy so badly that we have no choice but to become the 51st state. I want to hear from you. What do you think the grand plan is? Is there a plan? Is he flying by the seat of his pants? I'm constantly trying to evaluate and understand, what is Trump really trying to accomplish here? And what is the end goal? Interest rates are too high for those renewing their mortgages, and mortgage renewals are wrecking household budgets. Food prices are extremely high, and now everything you buy, build, or drive just got hit with another tax. So what should we watch for next? Well, July 21st, that's Canada's deadline. If Trump doesn't pull back, we will see how Carney responds. Retail prices, expect subtle hikes on groceries, home goods, and hardware. I also predict layoffs will continue to escalate. Ontario, Quebec, BC, especially in export-heavy industries. Construction will experience delays, tons of canceled projects, and cost overruns. Now, this isn't just tariffs. It's also a supply chain shock, and we're living through it every day. Folks, if you found this video helpful, please smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment. What have you seen get more expensive more recently? Lastly, thanks for watching, and I certainly hope my audio this time was much better than on my last video. I do have a new mic, which I'm not currently using because I'm waiting for a connection cord before, but I hope that today's video had much better audio. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.